All right, back to what I was saying about the Yom Kippur War and oil. Okay, this is gonna go well. Everybody's ready to be an adult for 5 seconds. Can you explain this conflict in pizza? I'm just gonna take you back to June 5th. Okay, this is as far as we're going back. All right, to June 10th of 1967. Okay, and I'm gonna give you a very, very TLDR of this. A lot of Arab nations, 20 years after, or just almost 20 years after Israel was made into a state, where a lot of the other Arab nations that surrounded it attacked Israel. Okay, and Israel was historically looking back, people would say they were completely outnumbered, outgunned, outflanked, and everything. But Israel had done a lot of preparation for this event happening, and so because of that, they were able to pull off some really superior air tactics in the beginning that were able to demobilize a lot of the Egyptian military and some of the northern territory. But either way, at the end of this, we ended up seeing Israel claim a larger portion of territory than they had before. Okay, so part of that was what we consider the West Bank today and the Gaza Strip. Okay, they also took all of the Sinai Peninsula and this border area here, right? And so when they beat Egypt, and part of the reason they were able to beat Egypt was because of the push over the Suez Canal, nobody was expecting, but they were able to take this, right? And because of this, a lot of these Arab nations ended up realizing that it wasn't going to be such an easy target, and they ended up infighting and whatnot. The Camp David Accords happened. Egypt and the peace treaty happened, and so Egypt ended up getting back the Sinai Peninsula, everything except for the Gaza Strip and the West Bank here. Golan Heights and everything where Syria was claimed as well. Okay, so that was kind of a very TLDR of there was an attack. I'm not talking about what led to it, what the geopolitics were. There was an attack from all of these countries that got together. They went. Israel ended up winning the war. Obviously, they were, they didn't do it by themselves. There was a lot of U.S. involved military equipment, and there was a lot of other outside stuff. Plus, there was a point where Israel was actually potentially going to take more of Egypt, but then Russia, who had recently pulled out of the region, had threatened to come back in, and so Israel was kind of told that they should do a peace treaty. So that's kind of where we're at. Okay, so that's historical. Okay, nothing I said there was an opinion. Okay, so you can disagree on the involvement and why people were involved and how it worked out. I'm just giving you historical what happened. That's just what happened, okay? That's how we got to the way it looks here, okay? So then that leads us to the Yom Kippur War, okay? Obviously, if you want to do a more in-depth analysis of the war, kind of like there was a lot of things that happened during that war that from a historical, if you're into history and stuff, is actually really interesting. And I know it sounds kind of weird considering the political climate to this morning, but a lot of interesting things, especially Israel and how they were able to change the way that aircraft bombing runs happened. They were able to do a quick refuel, kind of like think of like F1 or the NASCAR, where it's like 8 hours on the ground before they went up again. And then Egypt was actually able to hold their line because of artillery, but then Egypt pushed past their artillery. It was there was a lot that happened. And from a historical place, it's very interesting to study that war. But either way, that's basically what happened. Okay. All right. So now we push to 1973. So it's called the Yom Kippur War because in 1973, during Yom Kippur, which is the holiest holiday on the Jewish calendar, a lot of them for that week, there's no working, there's no going out, there's no electronics, there's no nothing. It's a very everyone is kind of a sitting duck, essentially. For several months leading up to that, Syria and Egypt were playing chicken with the borders of Israel, and they were doing buildup of troops and stuff, and then pulling back, and then doing buildup. And the Israeli prime minister at the time didn't think that they would actually going to do anything, and so they actually didn't prepare for any type of attack going into Yom Kippur and that other time because they weren't there, right? Even though Jordan and even Saudi Arabia kind of told them, hey, listen, these guys are actually kind of going to do it because they didn't have that same coalition they had during the 6-Day War after the peace broker was done. Some countries kind of backed off, and so they kind of hey, this is kind of serious. So that's why they call it the Yom Kippur War, because it was considered a sneak attack, right? Whether you think that that's just par for the course or that's wrong, back then, whatever, it was a sneak attack, right? They did it during the time when they knew that they were going to be, vulnerable. And so the Yom Kippur War happens. We get Syria and Egypt going for the attacks here, and they were trying to, what they said, reclaim the area that was taken from them. Okay. It's the fourth war in the Arab-Israel war. Okay. And so once again, guys, I'm only telling you the historical facts here. I'm not here to tell you, about the opinionations on here. But it was something that ended up happening in October, just like it was 50 years ago. Okay. And this one actually lasted about 3 weeks. Okay, just under 3 weeks, all right? Now, why am I bringing up this right here? Why does this have to do with today? Not because of the sneak attack, not because of the anniversary, not because of anything. But we're talking about oil prices right now. Now, here is why I disagree that this conflict, unless other countries start chiming in, is going to cause oil to go to $100 a barrel. I think oil's already going up because of several other factors, but just keep in mind something that you may not hear in the headlines. Oil jumped this weekend. What happened in 1973? All right, so we had this, and then what happened is when outside countries started getting involved in this. Okay, either way. So the difference between 1967 Six-Day War and the 1973 Yom Kippur War is that during 67, we didn't really see a lot of outside involvement, right? It was more of a, of a war that was kind of, Israel was kind of let to do their own thing. Yes, the U.S. had provided military weapons and stuff like that, but like as far as actual support, we didn't see that. Yom Kippur War, we saw more international involvement on Israel's behalf, okay? And some of those countries in the UN and others were looked at by the oil, because remember, we had more of an Arab coalition back then. They basically said, well, because you supported Israel during this conflict, we are going to retaliate by putting an embargo on oil. Okay. And so what happened is all these oil producing countries, because this was long before the US was an exporter of oil and Norway had the kind of oil they did, and even Russia and stuff like this. Like back then, back in the from the 50s to the 90s, early 2000s, the EU or the Middle East was the oil. I mean, that was the oil. That's why they're so fucking rich to this day. It was decades of this. Okay, so an embargo happened, which basically said we are not going to sell oil to anybody who helped. Okay, and that include Netherlands, Portugal, U.S., all these countries. So now, if the one place, the main source of where oil comes from, now tells you you can't have any, what happens? Well, you have a lot of demand, right? This is the 70s. Everybody had a car. Everybody was, obviously plastics were becoming a thing. Houses were going up. Manufacturing was going insane in the United States. We were exporting all over the world. Prices went up. And at one point, okay, the price of barrel, okay, from the time the embargo started until March 3rd, okay, a barrel was $3 per barrel. And it jumped to $12 per barrel. That is a 300% increase. That would be essentially it going from $90 a barrel today, okay, to $360 per barrel. No, 100% would be 180. 200% would be 240. Would be 270, and 300% would be 360. Why is it every time I put something in here, you guys tell me I'm wrong? First, I write 1967, you guys go, no, it was 57. I write 360, and you guys are like, no, that's wrong. You said 3 to 12. Yeah, that's 300% increase. So that would be like today it's 90 going to 360. But that's not how it works, guys. 3 times 4 equals 12. Yes, but it's not 400%. You already have 100% baked in. 100% of $3 is $3. Another 100% is 6. Another 100% is 9. Another 100% is 12. So that would be, do I really? And y'all wonder why your fucking stocks and portfolios are down when everybody else's is up. It's not that the market's bad. Y'all can't fucking count. And then these are the same people that are in here giving fucking geopolitical, answers, and like you all of a sudden are fucking like war and religious scholars and fucking and tacticians and. What's the best way to turn a buck on this crisis? I think defense stocks are in play, because I think the Iran connection is something huge. Even though the administration is going to have a tough time right now because they just gave up, not just gave up, but they just returned $6 billion in frozen assets in return for those hostages. And then like a month later, this happens and Iran is claiming that they're behind it. That's going to be a tough one. So it's going to be difficult. But I think there's enough, which is so interesting, because I'm not going to get into the politics of this, but I'm going to talk about it from a congressional standpoint. You have Republicans who are saying very clearly, stop funding Ukraine. And you have Dems who are saying, keep funding Ukraine. And now that it's Israel involved, Republicans fund Israel. Dems, stop funding Israel. Now, I know everyone's going to come in and say, well, that's a different story, different this, we're doing this is a different situation. I know. I'm just saying how this, but if you break down the reasons for funding, right, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Like a lot of people are saying, stop funding Ukraine. We need to stay out of other people's business and we need to spend the money at home. And this is keep funding them because, we got to stop Putin in Russia. And then now it's, we must fund Israel. And people are like, but you just said we need to stop funding, get out of our people's business. But here, yeah, but it's different because this is a war against our freedoms or liberties, or these are our people, or we have a lot of people here. And these guys are going to stop funding Israel because obviously, they're attacking this other country, or they're being, they're attacking a smaller country, and the smaller country, should have its right. And then people are like, but wait, Ukraine's a smaller country. And then, well, it's different. You're going to hear this across the board. I'm talking about from the funding standpoint, not the geopolitics. So now that we know that, I've already expected that Congress is going to be fucking wild over the next month. It's going to be wild. Not only do not have a speaker, and the speaker might be somebody that most people think is off the rails, but then you got funding for Ukraine coming up with Israel if this thing continues, and where is that going to lead? It's going to be crazy. All I can say is defense stocks, because there's only one thing that both parties will always agree on raising the spending on. And it happened in the last spending bill. There was only one sector that both parties said, yep, let's put more money there. He yells too much? Okay, well, turn down your volume, dickhead. That's because it's coming from the Democratic, which is humanitarian, versus Republican, which is capitalist perspectives. Don't read chat today, Stocky. Don't read chat today. Oh, you're talking about Jim Jordan. Oh, back to what I was saying is both parties, no matter what, will always, one way or the other, agree on military spending. Now, there's a difference between defense spending and military spending. We broke it down several times. So, obviously, military spending. Because here's the thing. Even if you don't give money directly, because here's the thing. We're not giving money directly to Ukraine, right? Okay, it's not like we're just giving, pallets of cash. Okay, I mean, there is cash going over there, but it's like weapons and stuff. But that's these companies, these defense corporations or military corporations are making these, sending it over, and then either replacing it or building new ones, which they're going to say cost more money. And so the government's going to give them more money. At the end of the year, they got to get all that money out because you can't get a higher budget if you haven't spent all your money the year before. They're going to give you more. Military, yes, obviously. And that's not even a political Andy take. That's just how it is. You can go right now and look at some, where the spending goes. I mean, the money goes to the same place every time. War is better for the economy, yes or no? Well, it depends on your. Hold on, let me get back to so the embargo. So we talked about the embargo. So that was the oil. So in this case, I don't think we have the same concern over an embargo because Saudi Arabia is playing its cards separately. They're no longer part of this coalition. They kind of they feel like they're on their own and they're kind of running their own game right now. They've got both the U.S. wanting them. They got BRICS wanting them. They're cutting production. They are the darlings right now. They probably don't want to fuck up the position they're in, okay? And they actually have been, at least from the surface level, trying to kind of fix relations with Israel too. So I don't know if Saudi Arabia is going to get involved in this. There might be something from maybe Syria or something like that, but I feel like we're so globally connected economically now that there's less likely that you're going to see a whole league of Arab nations. I feel like it's going to be, Iran and maybe the Taliban if they want to do something as well, and then maybe some of the rebels in Syria or whatnot. But I don't think that we're going to see some type of coalition that says, all right, stop supporting these people, or I think they're more just going to be like sit on the sideline and be like, all right, we're going to stay out of this one. It doesn't feel like this is it doesn't feel like the same kind of scenario that we're gonna run into that problem or that concern from a global scale when it comes to oil and whatnot. Obviously, the Iron Dome, there's going to be a Lockheed, and those guys are going to be replacing those however long it happens. There's a lot of other things in play there, but as far as the oil side, I don't think that we're going to see this cause a significant push in oil because there's already enough issues with oil out there, and I don't think that this is really going to have any unless it could change. It could change at any time. I don't know. Because remember, in today's world, you don't have to win the war. You don't have to win the war on the ground or in the air. You have to win the war in the media. That's how today's world is. And that's not even a political take. If the vast majority of people on social media and media think that your side is on the right side or not, that's what you have to win. Okay? That's what you have to win, because that's when you can get that outside help, or that, that's why there's such a push to be in these different BRICS or NATO or G7 or whatever, the G20, because people want to have that there. And if you can win the war in the media, then that's where you're going to win the war. Surprisingly enough, and this is just based on polling. This isn't my personal opinion. This is just based on polling and based on international, takes. Based on this right now, over the past 10 years, with the rise of social media and stuff like that, the Palestinian people have actually seen a significantly larger increase in public support outside over the past decade. But this attack that happened this weekend, even though Hamas is a faction and a governmental regime, and the Palestinian people are the people under it, so it's not necessarily the same. But this attack has actually soured a lot of opinions, and so that's gonna play into this a lot. I think that's gonna play into this a lot. And so we're going to be watching this like everybody else is, from a perspective of the media. Now, there's a lot of stuff online right now. We're seeing videos come out of stuff that's like from attacks in 2014 or 2018 or 2019 from both sides, leading video and saying it's from today, and so everybody's freaking out. Make sure you just be careful with what you're looking at and the information you're consuming. But my big concern about this is not so much what the effects are from the outside countries right now, from the West or from the Middle East or anything like that. I actually think it's from within Israel itself. Because if a lot of you guys have been paying attention to the geopolitics in Israel, it's getting kind of wild over there. Because remember how I talked to you guys about the United States and how it's a generational thing, right? Like, why do laws never change in the United States and never become more like, I don't want to say the word progressive, because it kind of, it sounds like I'm talking about like left leaning, but progressive isn't like, the idea of progressive isn't like we progress through the times kind of thing. And so the reason is because people don't vote, right? The people who are in charge of making laws aren't the ones that you vote for necessarily during the general election. It's during the primaries and during the midterms. And nobody here votes during the primaries and the midterms. Only old people do. And so therefore, politicians do what old people want in the last generation until they die off, because that's the people who's voting for them. And it's until the next generation gets there that they change things. That's always how it happens. And so what happens is we see, that's why people say, why is it that 75% of all of America is either for the legalization, decriminalization, or descheduling of recreational marijuana, and yet it's illegal federally? That's because the 25% that are against it are the voters. I mean, that's just how it works, right? That's just how it works. Those are the people who vote in the midterms. I mean, we saw a study a few years ago that said during the general election, people 18 to 34, something like 56% of them vote. But during the midterms, it's 17%. These are the elections for your Congress people. They're the ones who make the laws and write the laws and pass the laws. The president doesn't do shit. Everybody wants to blame presidents and give them credit for shit like they do something. Most of them don't do anything. Most of them are just a party figure, head of a party to it's like a Manchurian candidate almost. Sure, they have some power, and in some cases they can drive a party's narrative because they're popular, and if they're popular, then the party is going to follow behind exactly what the they do because they don't want to lose votes. But for the most part, presidents don't have that much power. Okay? So, what's been going on in Israel is, and a lot of you guys probably don't pay attention to this stuff. I have to because it's my job. But Netanyahu has been voted in and out as prime minister like a whole bunch of times in the past couple of years. They've had like 10 elections. And you've got this real hard line being drawn right now between the younger Israelis and the older, more conservative, more, orthodox. And one of the reason that Netanyahu has been on the outs is that they're kind of like taking a hard line, some would say totalitarian type stance with a lot of things like judicial reforms and stuff like that. And they're actually having a problem with their own IDF and younger generation. Like, they can't get people to stay in after their mandatory 2 years. They can't get people to do all these things because there's actually a big division going on in Israel itself. Prior to this attack, younger Israelis actually have kind of sided with the let's kind of leave these people alone kind of thing. The older Israelis and conservatives have actually kind of pushed further to their level and said, no, we need to start taking our settlements back and start doing this. So there's actually tension within Israel itself. Okay? There's actually tension within Israel itself right now. Now, this attack and the way that it's being on social media is probably going to change some of those minds, but it takes generations. This is not me saying that this disputed area is free Palestine or is an incursion on Israeli land or whatever. That's up for you to decide. Also, it's not even up for you to decide. Unless you live here, you really don't have a fucking take on it. I mean, that's just my thing. If you're not an Israeli who grew up or lives near this, or you're not a Palestinian who lives here, your opinion doesn't really fucking matter on what you think. Mine doesn't either. Because it's real, like I said, it's real fucking, easy for me to sit in my air-conditioned house in Florida on my computer streaming to people saying, I think we should have a two-state solution. Or, I think this is an open-air prison. Or, I think that Palestinians should go somewhere else and give Israel their land back. Or, cutting off electricity to an entire population is a war crime. That technically is true, but that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not here to give you the takes or what I think. It's not my place. Right? Like, imagine if somebody in I don't know, somebody in Iran was having an opinion on a state right issue or the border in the United States right now. Right? If somebody in Iran was sitting there going, or I don't know, in China or in fucking Norway was sitting there saying, yeah, well, it's real simple. The border is the border. It needs to be protected and stop these people coming over. Or they said, hey, listen, Americans came here as immigrants too. They should open the border just like the border was open for them. You'd probably sit there and say, bro, shut the fuck up and go eat some of that fucking rotten fish in a tin can. So that's why, for those of you in chat right now saying, but Stocky, shouldn't they give this or shouldn't they do that? That's not my place, bro. That's not my place. You want me to tell you how to think. That's what you're asking. And I don't want to do that. My opinion, there's a lot of opinions I have. But I'm just going to tell you all what's going on. This is all stuff that's going on. This isn't my opinion, right? This isn't my opinion. This is polling. This is voting. This is why we're seeing the parties get moved over. They had to go through several rounds of elections to find a vast majority, but Netanyahu had to court the hardline conservatives in order to get his election through, and that's why a lot of people are saying there's a hard line going on here and that this conflict is not going to be like the last conflicts. A lot of people believe that because Netanyahu had to court the harder line conservatives in order to get a majority to take the government, the majority in the government, that they're more likely to go a lot harder on Gaza this time than in the past. I'm sorry? Yes, you are. You're educating us like a teacher who was in the army, so might indoctrinate us or is genuinely just teaching us. No, I'm just telling you historically who were the combatants in the 6-Day War, what the outcome was, what happened in the Yom Kippur War, what the outcome was, the embargo, why the embargo was put in place, who was affected, what happened to oil prices, the geopolitics and the world economics that have changed to this day. My opinion is, the first time I gave you my opinion is that we are not going to see an embargo this time because I think more people are trying to be like self-sufficient, especially Saudi Arabia, kind of just do their own thing. That's kind of where I was. This right here, that's not even my opinion. We know that the younger generation is kind of more hands-off here. I'm not saying that they want to like give this back. I'm saying that they're more like they're not trying to like, they don't care about settlements and stuff like that. We know that Netanyahu had to in fact court the conservative side to get a majority. We know that the conservative side is the ones that are more involved in the settlement disputes that are going on, especially in the West Bank. We also know that the videos coming out from this entire thing so far look very bad. Okay, very bad. And it's horrific. And obviously, if Hamas is the one who and Iran behind them that have claimed it, we know that Hamas is from Gaza. Okay. We also know that Hamas is a government. It is not the people of Palestine. Initially, Hamas was actually took over, and then there was a vote that took place. So we know that there's there's a lot of muddying of the waters here. It's not cut and dry. And I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe. I'm not even here to tell you where you should stand on here. I'm honestly telling you, have an opinion, but understand that your opinion is limited unless you've been there and have that. That's all. I just want you to understand it, because some people get really passionate about this, even though they have no connection to it. And I'm like, it's fine to be involved and have takes and absorb information, but be careful how much you really get involved with something, because you might run into the person who's like, actually, I just want you guys to have the info. That's all. And so that's why I think that military stocks are actually more in play on this event than oil, because I don't see the embargo happening. I do see that, in my opinion, I think this conflict goes a little bit harder and a little bit longer than the last war. I wouldn't be surprised to see this actually spark tensions in the West Bank if it does go on a couple more weeks. And that's why we're going to see defense stocks probably be a better play than oil, at least in the short term, because we already know that the Navy has already sent over one carrier group over into the Eastern Mediterranean, and we know that in the Black Sea, the Navy has already put a bunch of carrier groups where Iran is, and Iran has already said that they were the ones who funded and trained the Hamas people who did this. So I think that defense stocks are kind of more in play right now. Okay. Now, oil's still in play because there's uncertainty there. But unless the other countries start chiming in and getting involved, I don't know. The only one that would be a concern as far as embargo or whatever would be Iran, but they're already on an embargo, and Russia's already selling oil behind the lines to India and China. So unless Saudi Arabia or UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain and stuff get involved, I don't really see this pushing, because it's just a different world now. What I said was, don't hang around poor people.